I had always believed that love and relationships should be built on equality, where both partners bring something to the table, where neither person is expected to carry all the weight. But from the very beginning, Jake and I seemed to have different ideas about what that partnership meant. I was 23 when we got married. I thought we were on the same page, both eager to start a life together, both willing to work through the challenges that came our way. But over the years, something shifted in Jake. He was the breadwinner, and his role became more than just that. It became his identity. He started to see himself as the provider, the protector. And while that's something I can appreciate in a person, Jake took it to an extreme. It wasn't just about providing for us financially anymore, it was about controlling every other aspect of our lives, or at least trying to. The subtle comments started to sneak in. "You're lucky I'm working so hard so you can stay home and relax," he would say. "You've got everything you need, don't you? I'm doing this for us." I used to smile and nod, convincing myself that I was happy with this arrangement. But deep down, the resentment began to build. I wasn't just a stay-at-home wife, I was a silent partner in this agreement, expected to offer my gratitude but not much else. At first, I didn't mind the arrangement. I was the one who took care of the house, made sure everything was in order, cooked our meals, and did what I thought a wife was supposed to do. But soon, I began to feel like I was being erased. He saw me as someone who could be relied upon to maintain the household, but that was it. He didn't see me as a person with my own wants, needs, or dreams outside of what he had laid out for me. And then there was the expectation that because he was working hard, he deserved more. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about his pride. It was as if he felt entitled to everything. "I bring in the money," he'd say casually, but with an edge. "I'm the one who does the hard work, so you owe me more than just being here." He didn't say it directly, but it hung in the air between us. That subtle, unspoken expectation. The worst part. I let him say it. I let it happen because I had no idea how to stand up for myself. I thought it was normal. I thought it was what every husband and wife went through. At the time, I was grateful for the life he was providing, and I convinced myself that I wasn't missing anything. I had a roof over my head, food on the table, and I didn't need anything else, right? Wrong. Over the years, the comments became more frequent, and they were harder to ignore. "You've got it easy," he'd say after a long day at work, as if his exhaustion gave him the right to treat me like I was less. "I work hard, and all you do is sit at home. You should be grateful." The words stung. They stung in ways I couldn't even put into words. It wasn't just that I was being demeaned, it was that I was being reduced to nothing more than a housekeeper, a silent companion. I had no voice in this relationship anymore. I began to lose myself. I started to feel like I was living for him, for his expectations, for his satisfaction. He would come home from work and expect dinner on the table, expect me to listen to his day without sharing mine. But I had nothing to say. I had been silenced by his demands. It wasn't his fault entirely. I had allowed myself to shrink into this role, convincing myself that this was what love was. That this was what marriage was supposed to look like. But deep down, I felt like I was losing who I was. I wasn't Emma anymore. I was his wife. His provider. His caregiver. Nothing more. And I hated myself for allowing it to get this far. And the worst part was that I kept quiet. I stayed silent because I didn't want to rock the boat, didn't want to upset the balance we had, even if it was a fragile one. He thought I owed him my silence, my submission. But deep down, I began to wonder, did I owe him everything? Did I owe him my voice, my body, my soul, just because he provided for us? I began to realize that this wasn't a partnership. It was a transaction. And I wasn't just tired of it, I was starting to resent it. It had been building for months, the frustration, the exhaustion, the sense of suffocation. I could feel the pressure mounting, a pressure I had been trying to ignore, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The resentment was festering inside me, and it was only a matter of time before it came to a head. Jake came home late one evening, as he often did. His long hours at work had become an excuse for his distant behavior, for the emotional walls he had put up between us. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the stove, stirring a pot of soup, something simple, something I had prepared because it was expected. He didn't acknowledge me when he walked in, didn't even take his coat off before going straight to the fridge to grab a beer. The silence was suffocating, and I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. He sat down at the table, opened the beer, and let out a deep sigh, the kind of sigh that seemed to carry all the weight of his day. But the moment passed, and the usual routine began. I set the soup in front of him, silently hoping that tonight would be different, that maybe, just maybe, he would notice how much I had been trying to hold everything together. But he didn't. He didn't see me. "Is this all we're having tonight?" he asked, his voice dripping with dissatisfaction. He didn't even look up from his bowl. I stood frozen in place for a moment. My hands were shaking, the spoon in my grip suddenly feeling like it weighed a ton. Every little comment like that from him made me feel smaller, less than. He never once asked if I was okay, if I needed help. He didn't see the mental toll it was taking on me to keep everything running smoothly, to pretend like I was fine when I wasn't. The weight of his words pressed down on me, and it was the last straw. "You owe me more than this," he said, as he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "I'm doing everything here. I work to keep us afloat, and you just sit around. You should be grateful." His words were like a slap in the face. I felt the anger rise in my chest, my heart pounding against my ribs. I could feel the tears welling up, but I wasn't going to cry. Not this time. That was when it happened. The words I had been holding back for so long, the words that had been simmering beneath the surface, finally spilled out. "You provide for the family, I don't owe you sex," I blurted out before I even realized what I had said. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the temperature in the room drop, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Jake froze, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open in shock. For a moment, neither of us moved. The words I had just spoken felt like they had come from someone else, like they weren't mine at all. But deep down, I knew they were. I had been carrying that resentment for far too long, and now it was out there, impossible to take back. Jake stood up from the table abruptly, knocking his chair backward, and his face twisted with a mix of anger and disbelief. "What the hell did you just say to me?" His voice was low, dangerous, the calm before the storm. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The years of built-up frustration, the years of feeling like I was less than, like I owed him something just because he brought home a paycheck, it had all come to this moment. "I'm done," he muttered, his words laced with contempt. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, motionless, the sound of the door echoing in my ears. My heart raced, my chest heavy with the aftermath of what I had just done. I didn't know if I felt relief or regret. But I knew one thing for sure, something had shifted in that moment, something that could never be undone. The silence that followed was unbearable. I stayed there, staring at the empty chair across from me, waiting for him to come back, to apologize, to explain himself. But he didn't. He didn't come back that night, or the next night, or the next. And in the days that followed, I found myself drowning in the silence. The bills piled up, the weight of responsibility falling squarely on my shoulders. I had pushed him away, but I hadn't realized the cost of that push. The financial burden, the emotional toll, it was all mine now. I had no choice but to keep going. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost more than just my marriage. I had lost myself in the process. It's strange, the way things fall apart when you least expect it. One minute, you're trying to navigate your emotions, and the next, everything is a blur of responsibility and regret. After Jake walked out, I felt a rush of anger, of relief, but also a profound sense of fear. Fear of what would happen next. Fear of the uncertainty that now loomed over my life. The days that followed were a blur. The house felt too quiet, the walls pressing in around me as I sat on the couch, staring at nothing in particular. I wanted to reach out to him, to somehow fix everything, but I knew, deep down, that what I had said couldn't be unsaid. It was too late for apologies. The words had already been spoken, and now we were both stuck in this tangled web of hurt and misunderstanding. Jake didn't call, didn't text, didn't even check in on me. His absence felt like a weight on my chest, heavy and suffocating. At first, I tried to convince myself that this was for the best. Maybe this would push us to work things out, maybe we needed this space to really see each other for who we were. But with each passing day, that hope began to wither. The silence was deafening, and it was only a matter of time before the reality of what I had done hit me. The first bill arrived a week after Jake left. I had been putting it off, hoping it wouldn't be so bad. But when I saw the amount, my stomach twisted in knots. The utility bill, the credit card payment, the mortgage, it was all piling up. I had never been the one to manage the finances before. That had always been Jake's job. I didn't even know where to begin. I had no choice but to take control. I tried to keep my head above water, figuring out what needed to be paid first, trying to stretch every dollar. But the weight of it was overwhelming. I had spent years relying on Jake, thinking that everything would be okay because he would always handle the hard stuff. But now that he was gone, I realized how much I had taken him for granted, how much I had let him carry all of the burdens while I stayed in the background, avoiding the tough decisions. The more I tried to manage, the more I felt myself drowning. I would wake up every morning with a pit in my stomach, the fear of not being able to make ends meet gnawing at me. I wasn't just afraid of losing everything, I was afraid of not being enough. Not being enough to make it on my own, not being enough to fix the mess I had created. And then there were the sleepless nights. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment over and over again. The words I had said to Jake echoed in my mind, sharper with every passing hour. You provide for the family, I don't owe you sex. The words stung more now, as I realized just how much damage they had caused. It wasn't just a simple argument, it had shattered something that was already fragile. My marriage, my trust in myself, and my belief that I could make it through anything. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep holding on to the anger and the hurt. It was eating me alive. But the consequences were already there, staring me in the face. I was paying the price for my words, for the decision I had made to finally stand up for myself. And yet, in some twisted way, I also knew I couldn't back down. I couldn't take it all back. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. The bills kept coming, the responsibility growing with each passing day. But I had made it this far on my own, hadn't I? I wasn't going to let the weight of my mistakes break me. I had to find a way to move forward, to rebuild my life, even if it meant doing it alone. Even if it meant accepting that everything had changed and that there was no going back. But I also knew one thing, I wasn't going to let myself fall into the same pattern again. No more silence, no more sacrificing who I was for someone else's expectations. The consequences had taught me something about myself, that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to rebuild, not just my finances, but my own sense of self-worth. A week had passed, and life, as I knew it, had already started to feel like a distant memory. The house felt empty, too silent, with everything still echoing from the last words I had said to Jake. But there was something inside of me, a quiet, stubborn part, that refused to fall into despair. I had started to pull myself together, slowly, one small task at a time. I was learning to manage the bills, the grocery store runs, and even the little things I had once relied on Jake to handle. There were days when I felt a sense of accomplishment, when I was proud of how far I had come on my own. But then there were moments, especially in the quiet of the evening, when the loneliness would settle over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating me in its weight. It was on one of those quiet evenings, when I was sitting on the couch with a cup of tea in hand, that my phone rang. The number on the screen wasn't one I recognized. I hesitated for a moment, my heart racing with the possibility that it might be Jake, but then I dismissed the thought. He hadn't reached out in over a week, and I had no reason to believe he would now. I answered the call, my voice shaking slightly. "Hello." "Hi, is this Emma?" a familiar voice asked on the other end. My stomach dropped. It was Jake's mother, Mary. I hadn't spoken to her in days, not since everything had happened. The awkwardness between us had only grown since Jake left, and I wasn't sure what to expect from this conversation. "Yes, it's me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma, I need to talk to you," she said. Her tone was serious, not like the usual cheerful tone she used when we spoke. "Can we meet? There's something I think you need to hear." I felt a knot form in my stomach. I wasn't sure what this was about, but the urgency in her voice made me uneasy. Part of me wanted to decline, to hang up and avoid whatever it was she had to say. But another part of me, maybe the part that still longed for some kind of resolution, knew that I had to hear her out. I agreed to meet her the next day at a small cafe in town. The next afternoon, I arrived at the cafe early, sitting in a corner booth by the window. My mind was racing with 1,000 questions, none of which had answers. What could Mary possibly want? Why now? Had Jake reached out to her? Was this some kind of reconciliation attempt? I didn't have to wait long. Mary walked in, her face tense, her usual warm smile nowhere to be found. She spotted me and made her way over to the table, sitting across from me without a word. I tried to read her expression, but it was hard to get a sense of what she was thinking. There was a heaviness about her, something I had never seen before. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Emma, I know things have been difficult between us lately," she began, her voice soft. "But I need you to understand something. Jake's been a mess since he left. I've never seen him like this. He doesn't know what to do with himself. And I think he's realizing, too late, that he's made a huge mistake." I was stunned. For a moment, I couldn't process what she was saying. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean," she continued, "that he's been trying to bury everything. His guilt, his pride. But he's not as strong as he pretends to be. He's fallen apart without you. And I think he finally understands what he lost." Her words stung, but not in the way I expected. There was something almost heartbreaking in the way she spoke about Jake, something I hadn't seen before. He had been so adamant about his position, about his pride, about his role in the family. But now, apparently, the facade was crumbling. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know," Mary replied, her eyes welling with tears. "But I think he's ready to apologize. I think he's ready to make things right." The idea of Jake apologizing seemed impossible. After everything that had happened, after the hurt, the anger, the silence, it was hard to believe that anything could fix it. But as I looked at Mary, at the genuine concern in her eyes, I realized something. This wasn't just about Jake anymore. This was about me, too. It was about my own healing, about finding a way to move forward, whether that was with Jake or without him. I don't know if I can forgive him, I said quietly, looking down at my hands. I don't know if I even want to. Mary nodded, as if she understood. I get it. But I think you should at least hear him out. He's really struggling, Emma. He needs to apologize, for his sake and for yours. The conversation ended with no clear resolution, but I left that cafe feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe there was a way forward, not just for Jake and me, but for me, too. A way to reclaim the parts of myself I had lost along the way. It had been a few days since my conversation with Mary, and I still hadn't made up my mind. Part of me wanted to let things go, to accept the pain and move on. But another part of me, the part one had been ignoring for so long, wanted closure. It wanted answers. It wanted to know if there was still a chance for us to rebuild something real, something worth fighting for. I found myself standing outside Jake's apartment building, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I had never expected to be here, standing in front of the door of the man I had once promised to spend the rest of my life with. But here I was. And somehow, I knew this moment was going to define everything moving forward. I took a deep breath and pressed the buzzer. Seconds later, Jake's voice crackled through the intercom. Hello. It's me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to talk to you. There was a pause before he responded, his tone softer than I had expected. Come up. I stepped into the building, the familiar scent of it flooding my senses. It felt strange, as if I was stepping into a different version of the life we once shared. I walked up the stairs slowly, my heart racing. When I reached his door, I stood there for a moment, uncertain, and then knocked. Jake opened it almost immediately, his eyes full of uncertainty, but there was something else there too, something like regret. Emma, he said, his voice quiet. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, I replied, my own voice shaky. But I need to understand. I need to know if you really get it, what you did, what I said, what we've both lost. Jake stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The apartment was sparsely furnished, a sign of the life he had chosen to build without me. I could feel the tension in the air, the silence heavy between us. We sat down on the couch, both of us unsure of what to say next. After what felt like an eternity, Jake spoke first. I've been thinking about everything, Emma. About what you said, about what I said, about how I've treated you. I was so caught up in my own pride, my own idea of what I was supposed to be, that I never stopped to think about what you needed. What you were going through. I looked at him, trying to read the sincerity in his eyes. And what about everything else, Jake? The way you left me with everything, the bills, the responsibility. Do you really think an apology is going to fix that? Jake's face tightened, but I could see the pain in his eyes. No, I don't think an apology will fix everything. But I think it's a start. And I think I want to make things right. If you'll let me. I swallowed hard, my emotions bubbling up inside me. It was hard to process everything he was saying. The anger I had felt for so long was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, something like hope, something like the possibility of change. I wanted to believe that things could be different. I wanted to believe that Jake had learned from this, that he was truly sorry. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust him again. The scars, the hurt, they ran deep. I don't know, Jake, I said quietly, looking down at my hands. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can forgive you. Jake's expression softened, and he reached out, taking my hand in his. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I know I've hurt you, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want to show you that I can be better. I can do better. I pulled my hand away gently, taking a moment to process his words. The idea of rebuilding felt overwhelming, like too much to ask. But then, in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't doing this for him. I wasn't doing it for anyone else. I was doing it for me, for my own peace, for my own healing. I couldn't continue to carry this weight of anger and hurt forever. If I was going to move forward, I needed to make a choice. I don't know if we can go back, Jake, I said, finally meeting his gaze. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can rebuild from here. But it's going to take time. And it's going to take work. Jake nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. I'll do whatever it takes, Emma. I'll prove to you that I can be the man you need. I'll do the work. It wasn't a perfect resolution. There was no magic fix, no quick solution to the mess we had made. But in that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead would be long, and it wouldn't be easy. But I was no longer afraid of facing it. I wasn't the same woman who had stood at that crossroads weeks ago, unsure of what to do. I had learned something in this journey. I had learned that healing, both for myself and for my relationship, didn't come from avoiding the hard conversations. It came from facing them head-on, no matter how difficult. And so, as I left Jake's apartment that day, I knew that the future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. And maybe that was the most important thing of all. Subscribe to our channel for powerful real stories that touch your heart. Join a community where emotions run deep and every story brings a new perspective. Don't miss out, hit that bell for weekly updates.